Good afternoon to those on the East Coast, and good morning to those in the Central and West time zones. To those following from Israel, from Europe, we want to welcome you and wish you a good evening. Needless to say, this has been a very, very significant weekend. And today we have two incredible guests. One, of course, is our own Major General Nadav Padan, who will be giving a briefing and analysis of what's been happening over the course of the last week, and particularly over the last evening. And our special guest that we're starting out with today is Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. Those of us who participate in these briefings, we've had Lieutenant Colonel Lerner before, originally from London, who made aliyahs as a young man. And he is in reserve, and he comes back when there's a state of war, and he plays a major role in terms of the English-speaking newspapers, the English channels. I'm talking about Anglo channels, both in America, Canada, Great Britain, etc. And it's an honor for us to have Lieutenant Colonel Lerner with us. Just to contextualize what we're dealing with, think about a couple of years ago. Iran sent those cruise missiles that traveled over 700 miles, and with pinpoint accuracy, they destroyed the Saudi Arabian oil fields. The same Iran who sent cruise missiles, who sent intercontinental ballistic missiles, who sent drones, UAVs, carrying many, many payloads, over 300 different types of missiles and bombs. And think about the results last night. We have really experienced something that is nothing short of miraculous and nothing short of an incredible tribute to Israel's missile defense system, the IDF, as well as the IDF's partners, the United States, Britain, and many others. And to hear that story and to have an analysis, we have Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner, followed by our own Major General Nadav Padan. Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for making me welcome. And thank you, FIDF, for all of what you do for the soldiers of Israel. It is appreciated. I've been acquainted with the FIDF for many, many years. And I get emotional every time I meet you guys, wherever I meet you guys, for all of what you do. We don't take it for granted. Even as an old reservist, we appreciate everything you do. And so, of course, when I was asked, can I join the FIDF today and brief you, despite the fact that I've done like 16 live interviews all throughout the day so far, and my day still is not over, I said, absolutely. I think it's of time, it's important, and it's important to keep you up to date. And thank you again, of course, Nadav. It's great to see you again, General. I would try, and I think that there are two key components that the Iran attack on Israel over last night and the early hours of this morning here in Israel that we need to weigh on. I will try and do that for a very short briefing, and I'm happy, of course, to take any questions. I think that the first one is that alliance that came out of the threat. It is an alliance of unity, of decent people, against the diabolical intentions of Iran. When we have, under the umbrella of United States Central Command, together with the British Air Force, British military, together with the French, together with regional players, which may seem even raise many eyebrows under the current circumstances. Everybody is working for the connecting negative line against Iran. Everybody understands that today it's Israel, tomorrow it could be other places in the region. And therefore, it created the opportunity for this unity that was and is extraordinary in extraordinary times. And as an Israeli, it's very heartwarming. Yesterday, before I got called in because of the heightened state of emergency, I was actually sitting in a meeting with the family of one of the hostages that had been released. I was talking to her just to listen about the circumstances. So when I saw that instance of a young baby that had been released back to her family, Abigail, and was called in to be prepared for the media effort surrounding this event. The contrast between the two, between the young baby that had been released and the looming threat that we didn't necessarily know the extent of what would actually happen in those early hours, but we have definitely made it into a huge opportunity to secure and safe and make the state of Israel safer today. And so that, on one hand, it is that coalition that came together, and on the other hand, it's what the coalition was actually able to achieve. In the aftermath of that, of the attack, we can now say that there were 170 explosive-laden drones that were fired at Israel from Iraq, from Iran, from Syria, from Yemen. We had attacks against us. 170 of them. None of them made it to Israel's airspace. We had 30 cruise missiles. 30 cruise missiles, again, from across the region. They were all intercepted either by our Air Force or by our allies before they were able to reach Israel. And then we had the ballistic missiles that have a relatively shorter air flight time of anything between 12 and 20 minutes. And indeed, a handful of those were able to hit Israel and hit the Nevatim air base, which I'm sure many of you have been to. And so, despite the huge success of around 99% interception, which is a phenomenal success. I mean, I don't think, we would never, we aim to get as much as possible, but we never think that we'll be able to reach such an amazing achievement. But it is the achievement of a combined effort. It is the achievement of the young men and women manning the aerial defense capabilities, the Arrow, the Iron Dome. It is the achievement of the leadership that knew how to pace, but also the ability of the IDF spokesperson's unit that was able to prepare Israel's society for the looming threat. And I think that was also a second component. And finally, I think the understanding of such a densely small airspace with so many players working in conjunction together to save Israeli lives, it's heartwarming. It's heartwarming after 6 months of being at war with Hamas, where we feel sometimes that the world is very much against us. Especially me, and sitting in the crosshairs of the world media that are most of the time extremely hostile towards me. But today, even throughout today, I've been given ample time to speak endlessly about the great success and the threats that we face. And so yesterday, if I sum up, it was a good success. It was an outstanding operational success. It was a strategic success that can develop more successes moving forward and create a broader spectrum of unity, but also support and strategic understanding. I think probably the biggest question everybody's asking themselves now is, okay, what's going to happen next? Will Israel be retaliating? What type of retaliation should we expect? Will that create more exchanges with Iran? And at this stage, I'll be frank and say, I don't know to say. I can say that at this stage, we have presented the government with a vast spectrum of options, and the government will be deliberating them later today and deciding, and then they will instruct the IDF to either to do or not, or to do something, or to do limited, or to do a broad counterstrike. The reality of over 300 types of aerial weaponry being fired at Israel, of course, is unacceptable, as it should be unacceptable anywhere. And therefore, the options are there, and the government will instruct us to act accordingly. Perhaps just to close, Steve, and I think that although everybody has been focused very much on the war and the exchanges with Iran today, we have to maintain the fact and realize that the war against Hamas continues. We have 133 hostages that remain in the clutches of Hamas. We heard this morning that the Mossad announced through the Prime Minister's office that Hamas had denied and walked away from the negotiating table, saying that they won't accept the offer on the table, which creates more dilemmas. Israel is determined, and the IDF is determined to bring home the hostages, every last one of them, either through negotiations or through operational activities on the ground, while protecting ourselves from the likes of Hezbollah and the Houthis. I'm happy to take questions, Steve. Yeah.
Two questions. One, Lieutenant Colonel Lerner, is this. The fact that Israel announced or shared with the world that the Nevatim Air Force Base was hit, you comment on that, why that was not classified. Number two is, if you could also share with us, it seems that there were some extensive strikes, key surgical strikes against Hezbollah that took place in the aftermath of the attacks from Iran and its proxies. If you want to comment on that.
Sure. So I think in this day and age, we realize that it's very hard to conceal an attack on an airbase in Israel, where everything is alight with attention and social media. I think the sad reality is that a 7-year-old girl was critically wounded in the attack from shrapnel or debris that fell from the skies and injured her in her head, and she is currently fighting for her life adjacent to the Nevatim Air Base. And so I think there's always going to be a trade-off of what is it you're able to censor, what is it that is necessary to censor. And we felt that it was very, very important actually to be forthcoming with this information. I'm sure that within the military censorship and the operational security, there are people that are less happy, precisely for the reasons that you raise. But we have to be credible to the people of Israel, and part of being credible is being truthful and forthcoming. With regard to the second question, if you could just remind me, I had so many questions today. Sorry. Yeah,
there were some very surgical strikes on key Hezbollah positions, key Hezbollah strategic locations. Can you comment on that?
So we've had, over the course of the last two days, we've had an uptick in rockets being fired by Hezbollah towards Israel. I wouldn't necessarily connect those strikes with the attack from Iran, but rather to the ongoing efforts that we are doing to degrade Hezbollah's production capability, their industrial capabilities to develop and build weaponry. And that is what we count the counterstrikes that we conducted today, although they were in the depth of Lebanon, were actually as part of our ongoing effort to degrade and destroy Hezbollah's operational capabilities. With regard to Hezbollah, I think that Israel is currently still, in essence, on a defensive posture with regard to Hezbollah. Preemptive against attacks that are being formulated, but defensive in its essence is where diplomacy is the chosen route to try and distance Hezbollah from the border, to try and get them to move through the tools of diplomacy in accordance to the 1701 United Nations Security Council resolution from 2006. But at the same time, the IDF is making the necessary preparations to utilize military force on that front as well. It's not something that we are focused on at this time, but the preparations are there. Of course, the Northern Command is extensively training for that eventuality. And I would add that the focus is to try and complete the operation, the war effort in Gaza, and then the effort could shift to the Northern Front as well. But the chosen route currently is the route of diplomacy, hoping that it will develop and create a secure reality for the people that now for 6 months have been out of home. Around 60,000 people today are living outside of their home on the border with the north. I'm sure General Padan, with all of his experience in the northern frontier, can definitely elaborate on what that means for Israel today.
Lieutenant Colonel Lerner, we want to thank you. We know there are a number of broadcast channels, there are a number of networks that are waiting for you, and we're profoundly grateful that you made time. We have obviously on this briefing, both live and those who receive it by email, there'll be tens of thousands watching you, but we know that you have many, many other tasks, and we can't thank you enough for squeezing us in, for making time for us, and for sharing. We know this is not easy on your family. You know, you've been a reservist for many years. It interrupts your work schedule. We're very proud of you, and we're very honored to every time we have a chance to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and shalom.
Shalom. Major General Padan, what's that Chinese proverb? May you be cursed to live in very interesting times. Needless to say, Major General, we want to hear what you have to say, your analysis, because these are very challenging times.
So let's speak a bit about the Iranian, because we describe the Iranian problem as the head of the octopus that operate all those proxies at the Middle East, trying to force the Middle East to accept the Shia ideology and spread the Shia ideology, by the way, all over the world. The Middle East is the first step. If I have to speak about the Iranian from military perspective, I would say that since the early 80s, they developed the forces in two routes. The proxy that's been mentioned again and again over the last few months, and the other routes is missiles and drones. Mostly reverse engineering. They, as you well know, they captured the American RQ and the American Eagle, and they did reverse engineering of both. They did reverse engineering for Chinese and Korean drone, and over the years, with 20 years of experiences and development, they become independent. Their arsenals of missiles cover the whole Middle East, from short range. When I'm saying short range, I mean 300 kilometers, that cover the borders of Iran with the Fatah missile, and then they developed the Shahad 2 to half a kilometer, and then the Fakir for 800 meters, and then the Shahad 3 that hit Israel, that covered 10,000 kilometers. And they also declare that they have ultrasonic ability that can cover 2,000 kilometer range, which cover most of Europe, by the way. And they have the cruise missile, the Sumar and other that could cover range of almost 2,000 kilometers. Huge arsenals of drones, suicide drone, attack drones, intelligence drones. They have the biggest arsenals of missiles and drones in the Middle East. The only one that had arsenal bigger than Hezbollah is the Iranian, which kind of answer for their limitation or their disability when it comes to ground maneuver and to air maneuver. Their air force is not really developed. They still have squadron of F-4. For the last almost 20 years, they tried to buy more developed jet from Russia and from China at the time. They are negotiating Russia right now to buy a 5th generation jet from them. We all know that they sell Russia drones for the war against Ukraine. Most of the drones that you see in Ukraine the last few months come from Iran. So they have very sophisticated ability. And we noticed years ago that that's what they're doing. And to defend ourselves, we start developing our own anti-missiles system. We'll start with the concept of Arrow 1, which are not exist anymore, with the US, by the way. Till Arrow 2, we were independent. We developed our own missile defense system. From Arrow 2, we've been forced by the US, but thank God we did, to become part of regional counter missiles defense running by CENTCOM, the US CENTCOM. And we start cooperating with our neighbors. Abraham Accord and the peace agreement were part of it. And we all know about the counter missiles exercise that we're having under the CENTCOM every year, the Jennifer Cobra and other. So everything that we train and prepare technology-wise and operational-wise over the last few years been tested last night very, very successfully. Never on Earth counter missile defense had those kinds of successes. And as been mentioned before, all the drones and all the cruise missiles been tackled before they penetrate the border of Israel. The only missile that's been able to penetrate the border of Israel are the ballistic missiles. And even with the ballistic missile, we have over 90% of success to intercept them. The damages that we had at the Bedouins area are from fragment of interception, not from the hitting of the missile itself. The only place that's been hit is the Nevatim airport base, which the damages are very, very light damage. Nothing that block or even sabotage the operational ability of the base for second. But then,
Major General Padan, the various missiles, the various UAVs that you described at the beginning of your analysis, did Iran use some of the high-level, more sophisticated vehicles to attack Israel last night?
Yes. Not the hypersonic, which we, I believe, I don't know everything, but I believe that they don't have it yet. It's under R&D, under development. But when it comes to drones and missiles, they use whatever they got. That's their abilities. Now, I must say that from tactical perspective, the attack were a failure, or the missile defense system of Israel were showing huge, unique abilities. And from that perspective, it was a success. But you cannot win war by defending. And the biggest problem here is that we are getting into different kind of, I would say, changing of the equation of deter in the Middle East, because the Iranian can use missiles against Israel that they didn't allow themselves to use before, although they did it against Azerbaijan, against Saudi Arabia, didn't been mentioned before, with no dramatic response. By the way, against American bases after the elimination of the assassination of Soleimani, they launched thousands of missiles and cruise missiles toward the American bases in Iraq and Syria. So the tactical ability are not new, and we didn't been surprised from that. We've been surprised from the fact that the Iranians changed the strategy. Till last night, the strategy were to lead or to leave the friction against Israel to the proxies without taking risk at the main cities of Iran. And that's quite a change, which we'll have to analyze and understand what we're going to do with it. And so far, while we're meeting here, that the G7 published 2 declarations that they're condemning the Iranian and asking Israel to do whatever it can, not to attack Iran back, and to leave it to other efforts, diplomacy and other, which could be a way out of the humiliation, or a kind of backdoor to the European that didn't support us since October 7 to go back to their traditional position they show the last few months. When it comes to Gaza, two pretty dramatic or changes happened over the last few days. First of all, for everyone or the one of us that had hope that Hamas will receive a positive answer to the suggestion of the US and the Qatar and the Egyptian, they are in a situation that they won't accept any negotiation offer, but a negotiation offer that will include the end of the war. That's the situation. Things could be changed, but right now, with that context, that's the situation. Second, we are running an operation at the center of Gaza Strip that nobody mentioned at Nuseirat camp at the center of Gaza Strip and Azahara neighborhood with a few successes. Elimination of leadership and destroying another infrastructure of Hamas. So the third phase of the operation in Gaza showing as that it was the right tactical decision. We withdraw from most of Gaza while letting the terrorists pump up from the subterranean system, show themselves, and when they're showing themselves and we have the opportunity to attack, we're attacking it. We did it in Shifa, we're doing it, we did it in Khan Yunis, and we're doing it right now in Nuseirat, and we definitely have to do it in Rafah. I'm speaking right now about my opinion. When it comes to using our forces, the IDF decided to recruit back to a reservist brigade to support the operation in Gaza, which means that nothing been end yet. The operation continue, and when the IDF declared, the government of Israel declared that it's going to take a year, at least a year, it wasn't just words. It was based on tactical and operational plans of the IDF, and so far things been running as the IDF planned. We have problem, now I'm speaking about my opinion, with the translation of our tactical success to strategic successes. And we won't be able to run for a long time from dealing with the question of the day after. As long as we're not offering any substitution to Hamas, Hamas will be in control. And therefore, although we are destroying his military or terrorist ability, from governmental leadership ability still exists and still there. He's the only one that there. Although he doesn't have the ability that he had before October 7, but there, as long as there is no substitution, he's the one to reach for if you are a citizen of Gaza Strip, and we'll have to deal with that as well. We cannot run away from dealing with this question anymore. It's create strategic problem that cannot avoid. When it comes to Lebanon, I must tell you that what we saw yesterday was partly a support of the Iranian attack and partly a continuation of the friction along the border. They keep trying to stay under the threshold of war. From the perspective of the Lebanese arena, there is no strategic change. There is tactical successes here and there, but from strategic point of view, nothing been changed. They are keeping the friction as long as the war in Gaza Strip continue, with making all the effort that they can to keep things under the threshold for war. Hezbollah have ability to do a lot more than they are doing the last few months, and fact that they don't do it is because they tell from the ability of Israel, and they don't want to, and the context in Lebanon are not allowing them to run into war. Having said that, we're dealing with war. War is a very fragile system. Every tactical mistake could lead us to a full-scale war.
Over the 6 months, you've been sharing with us that this very fragile situation, they do something, we respond, Israel responds, etc. If you could speculate, over the last 6 months, what percentage of the Hezbollah infrastructure has the IAF eliminated? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%, both in terms of missile launchers, facilities, bases, etc.?
So I don't think that the percentage is the right way to describe it. I would say that the IDF over the first few months were focused in destroying the ability to launch strike like October 7 along the border of Lebanon by pushing the Radwan forces toward the north into the Litani River, by the way, with successes in most area of the border of Lebanon, and destroying their infrastructure and ability to get organized as those kind of strike along the border of Israel. So if you saw at the map of the attack of Israel at the beginning of the war, they were focusing at the ring or at the belt of South Lebanon along the border with Israel, with specific mission to push the Radwan forces north to the Litani River. That was one of the mission. The other mission is to block their ability to upgrade their missiles and their facilities. And we attack strategic manufacturers, and we keep attacking arsenals and what President Bush used to call the axis of evil, that transfer ammunition and knowledge from Iran through Iraq, Syria, to Lebanon. So that was the second focus. And the third one is to try to hunt the leadership of mostly of Radwan forces, which is the special forces of Hezbollah along the border. So percentages are not really describing the result of the friction right now, but I can tell you that Hezbollah lost over 300 of his activists, of his terrorists along the border. He understands that the IDF have ability that he haven't. What Hezbollah been able to do is two things. One is strategic thing is to, as been mentioned, to push the people that lives along the border out of the border, to withdraw from the villages and the kibbutzim along the border. Over 60,000 people are not living in their home, which is huge strategic problem in Israel. And the second thing that he did is just destroying the first line of buildings at the villages, at the kibbutzim, at the bases along the border with anti-tank missiles that are very problematic to tackle and to deal with our system. The Iron Dome are not the right system to block those kind of missiles. You have to tackle it or intercept it locally. And when it comes to long border, it's a huge challenge. So
does the Hezbollah still have huge resources of these Kornet, the Russian-made Kornet anti-tank missiles that they were destroying buildings and destroying property with?
Yeah, they have thousands of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The IDF very successfully hunt those team that launched those missiles, so they cannot do it as easily as they did at the beginning. Every missile is a complicated operation from the Hezbollah perspective. But when it comes to arsenals of missiles, anti-tank missiles, they have a lot of them. As been mentioned, the second group that, I mean, the Iranians have the biggest arsenals of missiles in the Middle East, and the Hezbollah are the second one when it comes to quantities and numbers of missiles and the quality of missiles.
General Padan, you had mentioned that the way that the Iranian missiles go into Lebanon is from Iran through Iraq, Syria into Lebanon. One of the questions that the participants have asked is, how come Iran doesn't deliver them either by sea or by air into, let's say, the Beirut airport, the Tyre seaport, or the Sidon seaport? How come it doesn't come through that direction, whereas it goes from the other side coming through Syria?
So it comes from all the direction, on the land, on the sea, and on the air. But, you know, simple as that, the ability to deliver hundreds of tons of missiles through the air, it's very limited. I mean, it's limited. The ability to slick it and hide it are very limited. And when it comes to the sea, you have to run along the border with Israel at the Mediterranean Sea. And that's quite a challenge. So the easier thing to do is to do it through countries that cooperate with you, like Iraq, or part of Iraq and part of Syria, I would say. And it's not that everything been produced in Iran and shipped as a package in a packages from Iran to Lebanon. Part of the parts are producing in Syria or in Lebanon itself. So we're speaking about knowledge, we're speaking about sophisticated part, and not necessarily the old missiles or the old system.
One of the questions that's being asked about yesterday, there's an assumption, and please correct the assumption if this is wrong, that many of the UAVs, many of the cruise missiles, many of the ballistic missiles were precision guided that were aimed at Israel. But yet they were taken out. You know, we've seen in the past, it's very difficult to take out a precision-guided missile. The incredible success last night in taking them out, what does that tell us about the missile defense system from the Central Command, the IDF's missile defense system, in taking out precision-guided missiles?
Look, although yesterday it was a huge success, we have to remember that it's an ongoing race and an ongoing war. So we are developing sophisticated radar. The Iranians are trying to create kind of a drone that know how to deal with our radar, the kind of replica of the RQ, of the American RQ. We are developing an Iron Dome system and David Slim system. They are trying to develop a ultrasonic, very fast missile. The Iranian declared that the missile will run in over 16,000 km per hour. So it's kind of race. So we knew a lot about their ability, and we developed radars and ability and operational concept that know how to intercept those kind of threat. When it comes to drone, it's a little bit easier because they are not that fast. You have a lot of time to get ready. When it comes to ballistic missile, that's different kind of challenge. And as you saw yesterday, so far the situation right now that our system is superior. Nobody promised that that's going to be the situation 5 or 10 years from now. We have to keep on developing, keep on our quality advantage and superiority in this race. So I mean, if you look at the history of war, you develop a anti-tank missile, the tank develop a defense system. You develop a more sophisticated warhead, the tank developed another layer of protection, and so far and so on. It's kind of race, and never-ending race. So far, thank God, we are superior, and thank God it works as it works yesterday for all of us.
Major General Padan, this is a challenging question. You articulated already that the G7 is asking Israel to show restraint. The Security Cabinet has already approved a response to Iran. When we look at the next week or two, and we obviously, it's the Passover holiday coming up, that's significant. It was last Passover that we were attacked by missiles from Gaza. Our enemies never miss a chance to attack us during the holidays. Where do you see this going? The tension between the G7 asking Israel to show restraint, but yet from a defense point of view, from a deterrence point of view, the need to that Iran will have to suffer pain for trying to impose that kind of damage on Israel. It's a tough question, and we know there are no simple answers to the question.
I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day, but we can say that there are three main options. At both sides, on one side, there is an option that Israel won't respond militarily, and the response will be diplomatically with sanction and with support of the G7 and other. Maybe declare that the Revolution Guard are terror organization or whatever the diplomatic declaration and diplomatic effort will be. That's in one side. At the other side, there is direct attack on the Iranian land. It's going to be a limited attack, limited to the scales and what happened yesterday. But it should be a response that will break the equation that the Iran tried to create here in the Middle East. And the third option is in the middle, is to attack not directly on the Iranian land, but Iranian assent on the area in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and in other places. Those are the three options. I don't want to get deep into the weed of the details because it's not going to be smart, and I don't know what's going to be the decision. And it's not only lay on the IDF ability. The IDF have ability to do both, to attack the proxies and attack Iran. And the IDF have planned for both. It's just a question of strategic decision of the government of Israel. And you know, during the last few hours, every 3-4 hours, we have another kind of strategic declaration to change a bit the context. So I really don't know. But those are the three options, generally speaking.
Life will not be simple over the coming month, to put it mildly.
Definitely. And for us, Steve, as the FIDF, we understand again and again that we have a long journey to support our young men and women that while we are kind of trying to figure out what's going to be the next strategic move, they are down there fighting day and night. They probably, the guys from the Air Force didn't sleep for the last few days. Mm. And I'll speak about the boots on the ground at the center of Gaza Strip and along the border. So we have a long journey to support those young men and women that are defending us, by the way.
The final question, if we could ask you, would take us back to Rafah. The Prime Minister claimed that he has a date for the beginning of the evacuation and the beginning of the beginning to control Rafah. We've heard, reports that the IDF is actually put in orders for these tents that can feed, that can take care of, provide shelter for thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. We've heard all kinds of things. Any sense that, or any insights you may want to share with us in terms of where you see things going in Rafah?
It's important to get into Rafah. That's my opinion. Having said that, Rafah is not Jerusalem. It's not, a necessity that without it, nothing can happen. We can achieve successes without Rafah. but Rafah is initial and vital to the effort of the IDF, mainly not because of the battalion that are still there, the Hamas battalion that are still there, because Rafah controlled the border between Gaza Strip and Egypt, which is one of the main doors for smuggling into Gaza Strip. Even if we want to control the smuggle of ammunition and knowledge, military knowledge, into Gaza Strip, we have to be there. We'll know that something are moving forward when we'll start seeing the population of Rafah marching toward the Mediterranean shore, to the refugees camp, to the tents that located along the shore. It didn't happen yet, and while we see that, we'll know that we have week or 10 days till the maneuver will start on the ground.
One thing, if you could just confirm, and if this is wrong, please correct this, and that is that it's not an option for Israel to take control of the Philadelphia corridor between Rafah, Egypt, and Rafah, Gaza, without taking control of the city itself. It's just not a practical option.
I would say not part of the city for sure. We don't necessarily have to control the Shavura refugee camp, for example, but we have to control at least the neighborhoods at the south part of Gaza that close to the border. We have to take something like 1K from the old fence, which is, let's say, 1,400 meters from the border between Israel and Egypt, at least. The north part of Rafah are not necessarily important for that.
And the tunnel network under Rafah, we assume, is quite extensive and quite significant, and it encompasses the whole city.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're speaking about just about hundreds of tunnels. In some of them, you can actually drive a pickup car. It's not. Yeah.
I'm sorry. At this point, is it in the? You may not be able to answer this from a classified point of view. Is it fair to assume that tunnels connecting Khan Yunis and Rafah, there's been a severance of those tunnels? You can't reach from one part to the other at this point.
There is. I don't want to get into a minefield here, but I would say that part of the strategic system that connect between the south and the center and the north part of Gaza Strip been damaged significantly. So they cannot move as easy as they moved before the maneuver, but still they have tunnels that we didn't reach or didn't destroy yet. Not a kind of tunnel that you can, drive a car through, but you can smuggle hostages, for example, from one place to another through them. And it happened.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for your analysis. Thank you for contextualizing for all of us what's happening, what is about to happen. And obviously, this is something to our participants that as events develop, as events continue, depending on the frequency of the events, we'll be having the frequency of briefings. Please stay tuned to your emails. And the point that General Padan has made is that the urgent needs that come on behalf of the Ministry of Defense, on behalf of the IDF, are significant. We at FIDF are getting requests. I wouldn't say every day, but I would say every other day we're getting significant requests. And they extend to many, many areas, whether it's bereaved families, whether it's PTSD, whether it is the needs of the soldiers in the field, the humanitarian, the health needs, etc. They're very significant. To put it mildly, this emergency campaign is right now in full steam ahead because of the not only frequency of the requests, but because of the asks of the requests. Please continue with the parlor meetings. Please continue your donations. And we're very grateful on behalf of the soldiers for your continuous support of their needs. Remember, these young men and young women, they're not only defending Israel, They're the ones who are the front line of preventing that Islamic Shia caliphate from taking over the Persian Gulf, the Middle East. And they're the ones ultimately on the front line of Western civilization. We see that. The world appreciates that. The world may not always articulate that, but we see that coming out of the Sunni Arab nations. We see it coming out of Western nations. And it's these young men and young women who ultimately are defending humanity. Until our next briefing, we want to thank Major General Padan. We want to thank Lieutenant Colonel Lerner. And we'll be in touch. We'll keep you abreast as this very, very fragile situation continues. All the best for a wonderful week.